Hi, my name is Emily Posner and I will be presenting my research. And I just want to apologize in advance because you can't really see it. And secondly, the words are flipped, but I sent you my presentation, so hopefully you can follow along on that. So my agenda today is to kind of go back to the historical roots of female hysteria, which date back to ancient Greece, and also focus in on male hysteria, which shows that we kind of demonize femininity as a whole. And then we're going to follow it to a modern day context to kind of analyze the contemporary legacy that female hysteria has on our modern day society, using an example from Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential election. And then I will go into a next to normal synopsis, my primary text, in order to get us acquainted with the work. And then I will address how next to normal illuminates female complexity in regards to mental health issues. So, sexist diagnosis of female hysteria. So, hysteria comes from a Greek root meaning wandering womb. So, Greek philosophers back in the day thought that hysteria was a physical ailment, that it was a misplacement of the womb, and the prescribed cure was marriage or pregnancy, which thought that it would put the womb back in place. And then it was classified as a psychological disorder in the 19th century, when doctors moved from the belief that it was a physical ailment to the thought that it was a psychological disorder with emotional and psychological symptoms, which can be characterized as calculating, dramatic, seductive, and just kind of the demonization of overemphasized and exaggerated stereotypical female characteristics. And some people describe it as a disturbance to femininity. So for women who found it difficult to fit into like their everyday female gender roles as being a mother and a wife. And so the hysterical seizure, which is grande hysterie, was an acting out of the female sexual experience. So it was a spasm of hyperfemininity mimicking both childbirth and the female orgasm. And Auguste Fabre, a French physician, wrote in 1883 that all women are hysterical and every woman carries with her the seeds of hysteria. So we see the basis of how hysteria was just basically for women and used to kind of take the stereotype that women were weak and fragile and all of the kind of negative characteristics that came along with femininity, such as like seductive and calculating, and overemphasize it and use it to like diagnose women for a broad array of symptoms. And the second wave came in the 1960s with a new emergence that's when the women's liberation movement was going on. So there was a lot of women seeking new jobs and employment, and kind of the society's response to women asking for more freedom was kind of trying to reinforce those traditional gender roles by diagnosing women with like more sexual liberation, and who are more seductive, right? And classifying them as hysterical. And so male hysteria. So we go into this because it does help address how people viewed hysteria as a whole. So male hysteria has always been regarded as shameful and embarrassing, and that it was a male hysteric in early studies was said to be unmanly, womanish, or homosexual. And so these traditional feminine qualities that were assigned to men was basically shameful in society and undermined their masculinity, which basically just demonizes female qualities. Okay, so this stereotype, or this prevalent diagnosis carries into our modern day context and still affects us today. So it's shaped the way that we conceive women's health and like the general credibility of women. So with endometriosis, this is my presentation, but this is just like general knowledge, that with endometriosis, women are rarely believed for their pain because their pain is kind of just swept under the rug and shown as like, oh, it's a result of like your psychological disorder and your hystericalness, and it's not women aren't taken seriously when they go into doctors' offices. And so there's still like the belief that women are more controlled by their emotions and they're more weak and fragile and unstable than men are. So going into the contemporary, using examples at Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential election, we see the trope of using women's health conditions to kind of discredit them, or kind of even fabricate women's health conditions to discredit them, was used to discredit her campaign. So conspiracy theorists, and actually some in the conservative news, tried to spread the view that she was unfit to, like, her health was in such such poor condition that she could never go be in office. And this was especially emphasized and ignited by when she was announced to have pneumonia in September of 2016. So again, it was using Clinton's health to discredit her. And then we can kind of see the echoes of when women are taking up more space, the use of the male oppressive hand to kind of try to force them back into their traditional gender roles. So as the first woman is up for election, American society is grappling with where women fit into society. So Next to Normal kind of comes in and tries to reframe the picture of women's mental illness. So it was always taken not seriously, and women were never taken seriously when they came into the doctor's office. So in this play, they attempt to show a nuanced female character with a complex mental disorder and how it affects her life and her family. So Next to Normal is a contemporary drama musical by Brian Yorkie about Deanna's, who is a mother, struggle with bipolar disorder and how that affects her family. So she goes through a series of treatments and medications, and she sees doctors. So it really sees the whole entire, it delves into her whole entire process with it. And I think it's especially important that they delve into the medical side of it, because she is taken seriously by doctors, and she goes through ECT, which is electroconvulsive therapy, which is a pretty controversial treatment. So Next to Normal challenges the idea of the female hysteric by creating a female character with a nuanced mental health issue, which kind of challenges the constricting diagnosis of female hysteria. Kind of instead of dismissing her symptoms of being manic and kind of plagued with anxieties and depressive episodes, instead of dismissing that and sweeping that under the rug, with a hysteria diagnosis, she's diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So they focus on the family throughout the narrative to invoke empathy. So through the use of pathos, it involves the audience and the audience's heart in the narrative. So we're better able to understand her complexity and accept her complexity, because we see our complexity within it. And then the narrative control is given to the woman to undo the sexist trope. So within the narrative of hysteria, back in the day, men were always telling those stories, and it was male doctors that were diagnosing women, and women were kind of just sat there given the diagnosis, while their husbands and sons and guy friends kind of went on to tell her story, their story. And so it attempts to destigmatize mental illness by putting it up on stage and showing kind of the ups and downs that go with it, and really seeing it through the family dynamic shows how kind of connects the audience to it. And mental health in a lot of media is always seen as a person who's mentally ill is always characterized as someone who's violent and dangerous and the other, whereas we can see someone on stage with a family and trying to be a mother who's plagued with mental illness as the same in a way. So for my conclusion, Next to Normal deconstructs the sexist narrative of the female hysteric, which has historically been used to oppress and silence women. So through a dramatic telling of Diana's story. Brian Yorkie is able to challenge the restricting and the restricting female hysteria diagnosis and the use of that to silence women's voices and kind of get them to conform to traditional gender roles. So thank you so much for listening. I'm sorry if I rambled on at certain points. Thank you.